In the nearly 100-year history of the United States Border Patrol, no agent has ever been convicted for killing someone in the line of duty.
Hey, ceasefire, suspects down!
Not one in 100 years. There's a concrete culvert between a bridge that spans the border between El Paso, Texas, and Juarez, Mexico. In June of 2010, children were running back and forth, touching the U.S. side and running back to Mexico. It was a game. 15-year-old Sergio Hernandez Rojas was playing the game with his friends when Border Patrol agent Jesus Mesa, standing on U.S. soil, raised his weapon and fired across the border. The bullet struck Sergio in the face. He died there, 60 feet from the United States of America. His family sued and the case went to the Supreme Court, twice. The court said border enforcement implicates national security and the judiciary should not interfere. The agent was never charged or disciplined. He kept his job and, as far as the public record indicates, is still gainfully employed by the United States government. 3 weeks before Sergio was killed, at the San Isidro port of entry, a father of 5 named Anastasio Hernandez Rojas was being deported after living in San Diego for decades. He was walked to the border crossing, and what happened next was filmed from above. Border Patrol agents beat and tasered him while he was handcuffed, face down on the concrete. The video shows agents on top of a man who was not resisting and a taser firing again and again into a body that had stopped moving. The medical examiner ruled his death a homicide. That is the legal determination made by the office responsible for determining cause of death, not an opinion. Homicide. 5 broken ribs, bruises covering his body, bleeding into his organs. The Department of Justice took 5 years to investigate and then declined to prosecute. No agent was disciplined, no agent lost their job. A handcuffed man was beaten to death by federal officers, and his death was ruled a homicide, and nothing. Raymond Mattia was a 50-year-old singer who had lived his entire life in the Tohono O'odham Reservation, about a mile from the Mexican border. On the night of May 18, 2023, migrants came to his door asking to use his phone. Raymond reached out to the authorities to help. Border Patrol approached in the dark, shouting commands.
Put your hands out of your pocket!
Mattia stepped out of his home holding a sheathed machete. He threw it at the officer's feet as instructed, and just as he began to raise his hands, 3 agents opened fire. 38 rounds. Raymond Mattia, who had called for help, who was raising his hands on his own land, was struck 9 times. The Department of Justice declined to prosecute, so the family sued. The government moved to dismiss, citing a Supreme Court ruling that makes federal agents functionally immune from civil lawsuits. That case is still fighting for the right to exist. A Mexican child, a Mexican father, a native man on his own land. These are the people on whom the practice was perfected. Their names did not trend, their deaths did not produce congressional hearings. They were the acceptable dead because they were brown, because they were, in every sense that matters to this country, disposable. Recognition in the U.S. has always depended on the color of the body in the street. There was briefly a legal remedy. In 1971, the Supreme Court ruled that citizens could sue federal agents who violated their constitutional rights. A man named Webster Bivens had his apartment raided without a warrant, and the court said the Constitution itself implied the right to hold the agents accountable. For nearly a decade, that door stayed open. Then the narrowing began, case by case. The court asked, "Is this really our job?" By 2017, Muslim men detained after 9/11 in brutal conditions were told absolutely not. By 2020, Sergio's family at the Supreme Court for the second time was told no. Border enforcement is national security. And in 2022, Justice Clarence Thomas delivered what most scholars consider the death blow. Courts should recognize almost no right to sue federal agents in any new context. Justice Gorsuch went further. His word was eliminate. In the 12 months after that ruling, 228 civil rights claims against federal agents were dismissed. Border Patrol, FBI, DEA, the door was not only closed, it was removed from the wall. In January of 2026, the Department of Homeland Security sent 2,000 federal agents into Minneapolis for an immigration enforcement operation. They came in unmarked cars, wearing masks and body armor into a city that had buried George Floyd 6 years earlier. On January 7th, 37-year-old Renee Good was driving through her neighborhood. A mother of 3, she had just dropped her 6-year-old son off at school. She encountered ICE agents conducting an operation on her street. An agent named Jonathan Roas, a 10-year ICE veteran and Iraq War veteran, circled her vehicle. Other agents approached. Renee put the car in reverse for a moment, then began to pull forward, turning her steering wheel to the right, away from the agent. Roas fired 3 shots, one through the windshield, others through the open driver's side window. Renee Good was declared dead within the hour. The Department of Homeland Security said she had tried to weaponize her car to kill agents.
This vehicle was used to hit this officer. It was used as a weapon, and the officer feels as though his life was in jeopardy. It was used to perpetuate a violent act that this officer took action to protect himself and to protect his fellow law enforcement officers. So we'll let this continue to go forward and follow the same policies and procedures that every use of force situation does.
The country noticed, her name trended, Congress demanded answers, Bruce Springsteen wrote a song. The machinery of U.S. grief activated because Renee Good was white and a mother and a poet, and her death could not be filed under the categories this country usually uses to make killing bearable. Still, the DOJ announced there was no basis for a criminal civil rights investigation into her killing. The agent, Jonathan Roas, was identified publicly. He was not charged or disciplined. He kept his job. The pattern did not break, but it just became visible for the first time. 7 days later, on the same streets, it happened again. Alex Pretti was 37 years old, an ICU nurse at the Veterans Affairs Hospital with no criminal record. His only prior interaction with law enforcement were traffic tickets. That morning, Pretti encountered federal agents on his street and did what citizens are told they have the right to do. He held up his phone and recorded. Multiple videos verified by ABC News show him holding that phone for at least 3 minutes before what happened next. His hands were visible, the phone was visible, he was recording. An agent pushed a woman near him when Pretti stepped between them. The agent sprayed pepper spray into his face and 6 agents tackled him to the ground, face down. An agent shouted, "He's got a gun," multiple times. Another agent pulled Pretti's holstered, licensed firearm from his waist and moved away with it. And then, with the gun removed and Pretti pinned face down to the pavement by multiple agents, an officer fired 10 shots in under 5 seconds into the back of a man whose weapon had already been taken from him. His parents in Florida learned their son was dead from a reporter calling for comment. The government that paid Alex Pretti to save veterans' lives could not find his parents' phone number. Steve and Miller had time to call their son a domestic terrorist on social media before they knew he was gone. A preliminary internal CBP review contradicts the administration's own narrative. It makes no mention of Pretti attacking officers, no mention of him brandishing a weapon. 8 policing experts told the Washington Post the agent's tactics likely violated modern policing guidelines. The state of Minnesota is suing the federal government for access to the evidence. The DOJ has opened a civil rights investigation. It is the first time anyone in official Washington has used those words about a Border Patrol killing. It is not the first time someone was killed this way. It's the first time the dead man was white. Here's the truth this country does not want to hear, has never wanted to hear, and will go to extraordinary lengths to avoid hearing. The violence that killed Alex Pretti and Renee Good is not new. It is a machine that has been running for 100 years, killing people whose names this country could not be bothered to learn because they were migrants, because they were felons, because they were undocumented, because they were brown, because they were in every way the U.S. measures the value of life beneath notice. Nearly 250 people have died in encounters with Customs and Border Protection since Anastasio's death in 2010. That number exists in reports that no one reads, compiled by organizations that cannot make you care. No agent has been held responsible for any of them. This is what impunity looks like when it is practiced on bodies the country has agreed not to see. It becomes a muscle memory, it becomes culture, it becomes the way things are done, and then one day the door widens and the agents are sent not to the border, but to Minneapolis. And the bodies in the street have names the country recognizes. The agents did not change. The immunity did not change. The absence of consequence did not change. What changed is that the street was in Minneapolis, not Juarez, and the dead were white. Congress could restore the right to sue federal agents tomorrow. The Bivens Act has been introduced twice. It has not passed. No hearing has been scheduled. 100 years, hundreds of dead. and this country only looked up when the face in the street could have been its neighbor. The question is not whether Alex Pretti deserved to die. He did not. The question is not whether Renee Good deserved to die. She did not. The question is why it took their deaths for this country to notice a machine that has been killing people for 100 years. And the answer is the answer it's always been. The one this country was built on and has never had the courage to face. It depends on who is dying. That's the part they leave out.